face-to-face interactions are valuable as long as they're well designed with good intentions. So as to say, don't just come to the office for the sake of it, to do the same things you already do at home, but rather come to the office to meet your colleagues, get to know them on a deeper level, work on a specific challenge, or if it comes to the learning part, do those lunch and learns, share those knowledge with them, give them opportunities and so on and so forth.
What we go to offices for is that sense of connection and is that sense of community. So human connection and community. And if you get those two things right, then the collaboration is the byproduct of those two things.
What we might do is Dan, while we're waiting for Tom, I might just kind of kick off the discussion with you, and then Tom can join when he's fixed his issues. So the kind of going from the topics you were just talking about, a lot of the research you've done for your book, obviously. I'd love to ask you how you've seen the world of employee engagement, culture change over the last 10 years. Even before the pandemic, it's been a rapid change, but before that and over the last 10 years in general, how do you think companies need to shift their perspective on engagement given the changes that we're seeing as of late?
Great question, Chris. I think, from my perspective, now engagement and culture and having happy employees at work has become a business imperative, which is to say, 10 years ago, people would work for companies, possibly staying in the same company for their entire career, having a very defined career path, a very good salary progression, those kind of things. And they would value those things as well. And in the last 10 years, there's definitely been this shift towards, I now want to work for an employer who has similar values that I have, has similar culture, gives me flexibility, gives me opportunities to try new things, exposes me to people internationally and different views and opinions. And this is what people are demanding. And this isn't only, as we say, the millennials joining the workforce demanding this. This is absolutely everybody now demanding this. And because the demands of employees are so high, that's why it's the business imperative. You have to do this to keep up and be an attractive employer of choice. But we're moving into the stage now where if that's the minimum you have to do, actually having a great culture can help you go even further. And I'm starting to see, and I'm happy to say, I'm seeing a softening of the CFOs and the financial officers when it comes to culture. And studies are coming out proving that companies with good cultures are more innovative, do retain their staff longer, and so on and so forth, thus leading to higher levels of profitability. So the industry has changed a lot in the last 10 years. There's a lot more experts out there on the topic of culture. And for me, only a good thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it, when you think about the CFOs, CEOs looking at their bottom line margins and figures, and when you can start to connect the dots between the increase in a focus on culture and what that actually means to the bottom line, that's when you start getting the conversation moving and changing. And it's there's so many factors that are driving that, which is great to see.
Yeah. And Lego was a good example. But if you think about Kodak, that's really interesting as well, because this is a company that was making a lot of money from processing films and printing pieces of paper. And their culture was actually not so bad. They had innovation. So they developed the first digital camera, but then their culture held them back because they said, we don't want to cannibalize our business. We don't want to take a risk, and we don't want to try anything new. So they didn't go digital. And of course, we know they lost all their market share to digital players. So That's really thought-provoking to me, because it was a company that had innovation, but the culture was wrong. They didn't want to take any risk. So sometimes changing your mindset can be a good thing.
Definitely. Tom has joined us. So Tom, if you want to join us to the stage, if you can, virtual stage, if you're able to put your camera on and your microphone. There you go. Maybe.
I think, Chris, it took me like 15, 20 seconds for the camera to warm up. So I just saw two questions on the right, which is, can we give the people the handouts and the presentations? And I think yes,
definitely.
At least on my side, and yours the same. The handouts, I think you can download them directly in the tool here, and if not, I think if they reach out to me and you, then we share them with no problem.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got the handouts are available for all those on the call top right. There's a handouts tab, and then the presentations. Yeah, we'll make sure to follow up with those as well. Okay, I think Tom's still having some issues connecting, so might just move on to the next one, and we can, when Tom manages to sort out the tech, we can come back and have a bit more of a discussion. The topic which I find is getting a lot of airtime at the moment is quiet quitting, and whether we believe in it or we don't believe in it, it's definitely around at the moment. And when you boil it down, it's employees limiting their output to be just what's required of them in their job description, so to speak. The question I wanted to pose to you, Dan, and to Tom when he joins is, do you think this is a new problem, or is it just something that we now need new solutions to with the changing workforce we're seeing?
It's probably not a new problem, but it's probably a more heightened problem, or a more visible problem, I would say, because we're kind of, in most of the countries in the world, in this perfect storm of having, as you said, that our skills are not keeping pace with the requirements of the job. So we have a skills gap, which also means we have a labor gap and a labor shortage in many, many industries. And that's creating this perfect storm of the employees being able to choose their employers. And when I think about quiet quitting, I do look at it from the cultural lens, and I think that's where you can solve this challenge, which is to say, first, you should also be worried about the people who didn't join your company in the first place. So the ones that didn't come in because they didn't like your culture, they didn't like what you were offering as a job, they didn't like the way of working. And then, of course, the ones that quit too early in their careers with you as a company because there was a culture mismatch or a values misalignment, or they found something better elsewhere. And in those cases, we really need to do something, because retaining top talent is critical for all of our companies. We need people to be happy at work. And it puts a pain in my heart. I promise you, I have pain in my heart thinking about this, that people come to work and they're not happy and they're not motivated. That's not good for them nor the company. So no one is winning in this equation. And my heart goes out to those people, because I only want to create environments where people are happy to come to work. Because if you have people happy at work, they come home happy, you have happy families, you have happy societies and happy countries. And that's much more powerful than the reverse. So it's our job as HR leaders to really work on that employee engagement, give people the best experience, and listen to them, develop them, listen to what they need and what they want to do.
Yeah, I agree. And it's, what I found really interesting too around this concept of quiet quitting, it's people doing their jobs. And, sometimes I find that quite interesting, where we're saying people are quitting when actually they're doing the tasks that are expected of them. So I think it's interesting. It feels like it's being perhaps applied in situations where maybe organizations have a bad culture, or a culture of working 60-hour weeks, 70-hour weeks, and then when they kind of say, oh, people are wanting to do their 40 hours, they're quiet quitting. It's an interesting way that perhaps it might be applied in certain situations where maybe it's not as relevant. I don't know what your take is on that side.
Is it like weaponizing it a little bit? And I'm completely against that. As leaders, we have to be the ones who stop the pressure at our level, not deploy it onto everyone else. And that's really important. And when you start saying you're quiet quitting and you're only doing 40 hours and the bare minimum, and that's a bad thing, we also need to be mindful that is not the role of a leader. That's not the behavior we should expect. So don't use it in the negative way either. That's my advice or belief. But of course, when you have those leaders or those people who are weaponizing it, of course, they have a different opinion, and it can be quite hard to change that.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's something that the situation. Hi, Tom. In the current situation, it's amplifying
Let's
it
go.
more than it was previously.
Yeah, but, well, I mean, in the last weeks, it's become the hot topic in the press, hot topic out there. As I say, I think it's probably is more amplified now because we're also living in a world where we are being more digital. We are coming out of the pandemic and things are changing in that respect. And of course, we're now living in an environment where the employees and the job seekers are rating and evaluating companies. Whereas before it was always the other way around. It was always give me your CV and I'm going to check it as the employer and then I will decide whether to hire you. Now it's the other way where we've got wonderful websites like Glassdoor and people can go and check how is the company culture? What is it like to work there? And I see that the people are, being more vocal and open in giving their feedback to the companies, which, is a good thing. It keeps us improving.
That's right. We nowhere to hide, basically, throughout that. No, thanks, Dan, and welcome, Tom. Can you hear us okay on your side?
Yeah, I think I can. I'm getting a bit of echo on yourself, but yeah, I can hear. I'm in.
Okay. Well, Tom, if you just want to give a quick intro to yourself, and then I'll ask you about the quiet quitting topic as well.
Cool. Yeah. So look, thanks. Apologies for the technological difficulties there. Yeah, still having challenges even in 2022. So yeah, my name's Tom Kegode. I've worked for Lloyds Banking Group for sort of 13 years now. I lead our work lab proposition as part of our people and places team. And that's been kind of looking at a number of things, I guess. So I spent quite a lot of time in the branch networks throughout my career, and then I moved into innovation about 5 years ago, looking specifically at people innovation and sort of workplace culture and how we can sort of accelerate some of the trends we're seeing in the people space. So I moved into this team and set up this work lab, which is almost a way where we're able to involve colleagues on the journey of what's happening in the evolution of work. So it's very much within the future of work team. What's the future workforce strategy? What's the future workplace strategy? And really focused on kind of what are the benefits that we're now starting to see that's been unlocked as a result of the pandemic. So we're emerging from a pandemic, and we've seen sort of the innovation take place in what we thought was possible over the last 2 years of probably about 5 years, right? Because we've been able to realize lots of benefits and flexibility of things we never would have thought we could have done. And I guess it's kind of my role is really much around how we continue that sense of pace and urgency around the people agenda when it comes to ways of working. When we haven't got that pandemic and that pandemic starting to recede. So how do we continue with that sense of pace? So yeah, delighted to be able to speak with you today.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. So jumping straight into it, in terms of the question of quiet quitting, Dan just gave his take on what he thinks. From your side, do you feel like the quiet quitting is a new concept, or what's your take on that concept?
I think it's an interesting new way to describe just doing your job. I'm really intrigued as to who has come up with this term, quiet quitting, because and what was the catalyst for it, right? I think a lot of people have gone through quite a significant change in their life where they've had the opportunity to reevaluate how they create that kind of perfect relationship with their work and their life. So, for example, I've stopped calling it work-life balance and started talking more about work-life harmony and how these things coexist. So I think it's the fact that people have started to really prioritize the things that are important to them, right? There's nothing like some kind of global crisis to make people start to reevaluate what's important to them in their lives. I have a hunch that the quiet quitting, the reference is almost come from some room where people are sat around thinking, how can I squeeze a bit more out of my workforce? And I think it's almost it's throwing a bit of shade, really, I guess. And I also think that there's this kind of quiet quitting is, if somebody is said to be quiet quitting, there's a symptom that sits behind. That's a symptom, right? Something sits behind that. That what is the root cause of people not feeling that they want to go above and beyond, and a feeling that. So I think there's a number of different things. I don't think the concept is new. I think it's just a new way to start talking about about it. So yeah, it's interesting that it's getting quite a lot of focus. I'm particularly find it interesting it's getting quite a lot of focus at this time of year, which I often describe as the kind of the back to school time of year, right? Where we always seem to have this cyclical push to get people to be sort of back to offices and back to environments. And actually, this is something where could it be considered almost sort of scare tactics of people to think that they need to start delivering above and beyond? So I think there's a lot of really interesting things. I don't think it's a new concept. I think it's a new way of talking about it, though.
Right. Nice. Thank you. I agree. Right. It's thinking of who came up with that term. I would love to know what boardroom that was or what session that was. Maybe we'll track it down someday, find out who it actually was. Okay, moving on to the next topic. So with companies, hybrid work, remote work, all the rest of it, what are your top tips when thinking about how we want to keep human connection top of mind? And even we had a question that came through before, which almost tags onto this around what are the critical factors for peer-to-peer learning as well. So almost two questions in one here. What are the top tips for keeping human connection in mind? And then what are the key factors in peer-to-peer learning kind of being successful? Maybe Dan, I'll start with you.
Sure thing. So, I mean, for me, I would say, yes, we're working, generally speaking, in this hybrid model. The office, or the role that the office has to play, or being on site, not even office, but being physically with your colleagues, I think is probably undervalued right now. We're still coming out of the pandemic and learning, and what we're doing in the bank is we're taking this test and learn approach. So we're not making any hard and fast decisions. We're trying to listen to the feedback of our people and continually adapt. But what we're seeing is very, very important, especially when it comes to learning as well. Face-to-face interactions are valuable as long as they're well designed with good intentions. So as to say, don't just come to the office for the sake of it, to do the same things you already do at home, but rather come to the office to meet your colleagues, get to know them on a deeper level, work on a specific challenge, or if it comes to the learning part, do those lunch and learns, share those knowledge with them, give them opportunities and so on and so forth. And then the other thing that I'm starting to see become much more popular, and it's related to learning again here, is we're seeing much more demand for this kind of gig work. So the gig economy, where people are doing short-term assignments, project-based roles, tasks, basically. And actually, we're trying to, we're 200,000 people across 32 different countries. We're trying to move people from country to country, even in a remote manner, so that they can go and work on something that interests them for short periods of time. Maybe they do their day job, substantive job, for 80% of the time, and they spend 20% working on something else with colleagues in a different team, in a different country, in a different location. And that's really great because they can then learn the skills they want to do or deploy the skills that they already have and not using in their day-to-day. So it's good for them in terms of learning development and good for the company as well, because we take advantage of the wonderful diversity that we have.
Brilliant. And when you think about that, it almost ties into that point around peer-to-peer learning as well. Have you got any insights in how you're almost seeing the spaces or the time in the office being used to focus on that?
Yeah, we're spending a lot more time, and we're catering for hybrid. So let me say, yes, we give presentations face-to-face, and we also account for people who are working remotely as well. So we're always having that in mind. But what we're doing, for example, for our top 2,500 leaders globally, we run a session every 2 weeks where we take an expert from the business talking about a specific topic, and they share their reflections and learning. So I have done that for the topic of culture. This week, we're having cybersecurity and our expert of cybersecurity coming to talk. Last week was actually green finance and green energy talking. So sharing all sorts of different topics to try to educate all of our teams. And we're looking at it through the lens of let's be very specific or targeted. So let's break lots of cohorts of the workforce into place and give them what they're demanding. That's one part of the strategy. And then the second is we have something called the Santander Dojo, which is, this martial arts concept of getting your belts. And we have this online, I call it the Netflix platform, where anybody can choose digital learning, online learning 24/7, which I think most companies are moving towards or have already. When we combine those two together, I think we have a very good package and offering there.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love that. Netflix of learning. It's great little phrase there. And Tom, on your side, I know when we caught up previously, you mentioned a really cool way that you're actually setting up comms when you're in the office. But just in general, the question to you, how are you seeing it play out? And then thinking also that peer-to-peer learning concept as well.
Yeah, sure. So look, I think we went down a bit of a rabbit hole at the beginning when we started to reintroduce offices after the pandemic, and we said we go to offices to collaborate, and that collaboration is the most important thing that we do when we're there. What we quickly started to notice is actually what we go to offices for is that sense of connection and is that sense of community. So human connection and community, and if you get those two things right, then the collaboration is the byproduct of those two things. So I think it's placing as much importance on that connection and that community, and that's the connection to each other, to your teams. I think one of the things we found over the course of the pandemic is that close teams got even closer, but it was the wider networks that suffered. And I think that one of the things I'm sort of more thinking is that virtual experiences are really good for maintaining relationships. I think deepening relationships is better done in person. And I think that's, however kind of frequency, right? And that's something that needs to be defined by individuals, by teams, by the work, and getting the balance right. And the way that we've approached that is to say, look, the role that you play within the organization, there's your individual, the work that you deliver in your individual role that you play. There's the needs of you as an individual. There's the needs of the team, and then there's the needs of the customer and the business. So we need to find that sweet spot in the middle that caters for all of those. Because I might be able to do my job perfectly well from home, right? I may be able to complete my tasks and do what I need to do. But actually, what does that mean in terms of that? And then this is where it links into the second part of your question, right? So it's like, how do we then enable knowledge transfer and wisdom exchange across the organization if we are having to have virtual interactions which tend to be more transactional? So it's those kind of side-to-side, hip-to-hip learning experiences that we can facilitate by just being there, right? And just sort of overhearing. And I had a really great story the other day from a colleague who had recently returned, and she'd returned to working in an office and hadn't been in for a while, kind of resistant to do it because she didn't see the value. She was then in an office with someone that she overheard in the wider team, and she said they were talking about a piece of work that I had done. So she didn't know this person, but they were talking about a piece of work that she had done. They were saying how good it was, and she said that made me feel really proud. So it's those kind of things that you just cannot have when you are not in an environment together. So it's how we place more value on those and enable those kind of tacit knowledge exchange and wisdom exchange. I think the other thing around office use is we have to now be much more intentional and coordinated with our office use. So we can't afford to leave it to chance anymore, because it's not necessarily that everyone's going to be in on those days. So it's finding ways to coordinate and to really unpack, and one of the things we're encouraging our teams to do across the group at the moment is look at what are those activities that are done and where do you do them. So what's the kind of tasks or activities and those kind of characteristics that benefit from heads down work, we call it, right? So heads down work, you may be at home, that could be sort of data analysis, it could be like pack creation, whatever that might be, but actually look at those tasks. And then what's best done heads up. So what's the kind of tasks and activities that fit within your day-to-day lives that are better done together? And getting people to have that kind of really critical assessment of the work that they do and think about where is best place to do that. And then thinking about their diary. And the final thing around it is I really need to stop hearing people say, I've been in the office today and I've been really unproductive because I've just been speaking to people. Because I tell them that you have been productive. It's a different kind of productivity. You're generating social capital, and that's where the work of tomorrow comes from. So I think it's just a fundamental change and mindset shift that we have to help people on. And we're trying to do that by giving people tips, hints, and encouraging, as Dan said, that test and learn behavioral experiment mindset where people can test things and feel okay if it fails, and we've learned from that, and that's what we're trying to encourage people to do, to take ownership and learn from their own, learn and test and learn by doing.
And you were mentioning as well around something you do with your email when you're in the office.
Oh yeah. So I'm in the office today. I'm spending the week in Edinburgh this week with a number of our teams up here. And this is kind of built from that kind of pass it on mentality, right? So when I'm in the office, I now put an out of office on to say I'm going to be in the office, and you will see a delayed virtual response from me on Teams and on email, because I'm making the most of spending time together with people face to face. I'm prioritising that. I will be on the 6th floor of Port Hamilton, or whatever office it is that I'm in. I'll be on the 6th floor in this kind of area. Come and say hello if you want to. If not, I'll be back whenever I'm back in, and I'll have a more virtual presence then. If it's urgent, pick up the phone. Right, we've still got phones, yeah. So people, you can still get in touch if it's urgent. I'm yet to have a phone call, so but I don't know whether that's are these things urgent or not, or are we? Does the virtual just lend itself to that always on? But this is one way that you can almost create those kind of behavioural nudges that people will see that, and a lot of people that have seen that in the office response have said to me, actually, I'm going to try that next time I go in as well. So it kind of starts to shift the dial by just nudging those behaviours.
Brilliant. We've had a question from Joseph, and we've got a few minutes, and I thought this is like a nice question we might finish on. Which immersive learning initiatives should an organization undertake to ensure that it emerges stronger and more competitive, given everything going on? So it's, thinking of, what could we do to make it more immersive from a learning perspective? Don't know, maybe Dan, have you got any thoughts on that side?
Well, one of the interesting things that I've seen as I was doing research for my book was actually Walmart, which is one of the biggest employers in the US, over 1 million colleagues. They've been using virtual reality headsets to train their people. And that's been really interesting as a case study, because what they found that they could train and develop skills in their customer service agents, or their customer, the people that interact with their customers, and they can practice very hard scenarios with them. So customers who have complaints or have had an issue, and they practice those. And what they found was not only is the delivery cost much cheaper, but the employees can learn faster and retain more information as a result of that type of learning, compared to a textbook or a paper-based learning or an e-learning, or different forms of learning. And that was quite an interesting reflection to me, again, about we're always scared of technology. As I said in my presentation, with the introduction of ATMs, with the introduction of the internet, everybody was petrified of both of those things. But actually, the technology that we're scared of probably can help us if we have a mindset which says we're willing to try that. And I think in the learning space, we have to try things. We have to find new paths. We have to give people what they need when they need it. It's much more learning in the flow of work compared to how it used to be. And, my final comment is, I always reflect that universities are wonderful places. The biggest thing, or the best thing I think universities do, is they give people the propensity to learn. So they teach people how to learn. Because actually, at the end of a 4-year course, probably half of the material you learned in the first year is outdated and not useful anymore by the time you graduate. But the useful thing was your adaptability, ability to learn, and so on, that you can then take into the workforce and the workplace. And I think we need to have that mindset.
Great comment. Couldn't agree more. Now, almost last comment from you, Tom. I'll give you the answer to that.
I was just going to build on what Dan was saying around that not being scared of the technology. So I think if we can use technology to enhance our human virtues, that's when we're going to be having real success, right? So it's how can we use technology to enhance those elements that make us human. There's bits that we cannot do, right? The bits that computers are not able to do. That kind of empathy, the kinds of judgment that we value, that kind of human connection and human interaction. We let technology enhance those things by taking away the things so we can focus on those. I think that's the way we need to get to and embrace it to do those things.
Couldn't agree more. And, having worked in the HR tech space for the last decade, it's really interesting when, tech isn't there to replace people. It's there to enhance and make them be able to spend their time more productively. And I think it's a really interesting concept, just to be able to embrace it and adopt it and see where you can get to with it. So On that note, thank you both. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Dan, for joining us. I'm sure the team really enjoyed that there. Can they reach out on LinkedIn if they want to continue the conversation? Would that be an invitation?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. All right. Well, thank you both. Really appreciate your time. Thanks, Tom, battling through technology and getting there.
You.
And thanks, Dan, for both segments as well. Appreciate it.